Okay, 7 o'clock. Let's get this started. I'd like that this Committee of Adjustment meeting held on June the 22nd, 2022 come to order now at 7 p.m. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Vanderwill and seconded by Kennedy. All in favor? Mark, are you in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Mr. Webster? I don't believe he has any. We're going to assume that he doesn't. He can change his mind later if he does. Okay, I'd like to welcome you to this Committee of Adjustment meeting to allow the public an opportunity to express their views regarding the proposed minor variances and consents within the Township of Springwater. Each applicant and their agent, if applicable, will be given the opportunity to present their applications to the committee in public. Additional information on each of the applications, including any presentation materials, is available in the committee agenda on the Township website. Following, those members of the public who registered to make oral submissions prior to 4:30 p.m. yesterday, June the 21st, 2022, will be given an opportunity to do so. All oral submissions will be included in this meeting's minutes and form part of the public record, including the names and address of the speaker, as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the Township website. All comments or questions should be addressed through the chair. He's going to check and see if Mr. Webster is with us here. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, sir. Nope, there is no volume coming from you. He's calling in. Would the moderator please make certain that his phone is activated? Thank you.
Rick, remember to click *6.
Just did. Am I okay now?
Yeah,
You're good
we
now.
can hear you.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I failed the test again.
Good thing we only have 6 more. You might get it right by the end of the year. Okay. Just want to confirm you have no pecuniary interest disclosures this evening, Mr. Webster. Thank you.
No, Chair Gannon, I have no pecuniary interest.
Thank you. I will ask the Secretary Treasurer to please introduce the first application, item number 4.1 on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Item 4.1 on the agenda are minor variance applications A0422 to A1022, submitted by Huron Creek Developments, owner of lands known municipally as 44, 46, and 48 Beverly Street, and 59, 31, and 58 and 54 Allenwood Road. The purpose and effect of the applications is to permit an increased maximum lot coverage on 7 residential lots within Elmville Village subdivision. 6 out of 7 applications are proposing a maximum lot coverage of 40%, and 1 application is proposing a maximum lot coverage of 43%, whereas section 4.4.64 requires a lot coverage maximum of 35%.
Thank you. Has there been any additional comments or correspondence received?
In addition to the comments noted at the May 25th Committee of Adjustment hearing, we also received comments from Sharon Benner, who's purchased one of the lots in question and is requesting the approval of the variances.
Thank you. Ask the applicant to introduce themselves and update us on anything. Oh, hang on a second. Before we do that, Mr. Cooney, you have a question.
I think I'm speaking for Patty and I. We did not review and accept the previous minutes.
Oh, yes, we did skip over that. Oh, you're muted, Chair Gannon.
Previous minutes. Any questions or concerns about the previous minutes? I see none. May I have somebody move and second the minutes of the May meeting? Moved by Webster, seconded by Cooney. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Going back to 4.1. Mr. Barker, are you speaking on behalf of this?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am.
Go ahead. Is there anything new that you wish to enlighten us on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee and staff, members of the public. I think just to refresh, I know it hasn't been long, but yes, these applications were deferred at the previous meeting. I understand Member Kennedy was not at that meeting, and for the benefit, I think, of any interested members of the public, as well as Member Kennedy, I would like to just briefly make a presentation to demonstrate the appropriateness of the application. So if I could, I'm going to share my screen. I trust all can see this. So again, yes, my name is Greg Barker. I'm a partner with Innovative Planning Solutions. We're here tonight on behalf of our client, Huron Creek Development. Similar to last month's meeting, Mr. Chair and members, on the line for this call is also our consulting engineer, David Reed from Tathan Engineering. Huron Creek has applied for 7 minor variances on lands within the Elmvale Village subdivision to permit an increased lot coverage ranging from 40 to 43%. And as mentioned, these applications were indeed deferred at the previous meeting. So very, very quickly, if I could, the subject lands, they're located in the west end of the Elmvale settlement area along Queen Street West. And as noted, they're within phase 1 of the registered Elmvale Village subdivision. And again, just to quickly refresh the committee, this subdivision was registered in 2017, consisting at the time of 75 lots for single detached dwellings. And there were a series of blocks for additional uses as well. And through the course of registering this subdivision, the owner, actually, it was a previous owner, Huron Creek, has since purchased the remaining lands from the original developer. But the owner was obligated to fulfill many conditions of approval, including obtaining an environmental compliance approval or an ECA for the storm management works, as well as the other infrastructure works. But I'll focus on the stormwater management for now. And that ECA included approval to construct the pond, which is located on block 79 in the top right corner or the northeast corner of the subdivision. The ECA application that was submitted, it considered all of the development within the plan, including lands within phase 2, which are located to the south, as well as potential additional development lands located to the east. And I'm specifically pointing that out, Chair Gannon, as a result of some of the discussion that ensued at the previous meeting. At the time, they were referred to sort of as the triangle lands. And I'm just pointing them out again on this image here for committee's reference. And as confirmed at that meeting last month, there were assumptions made on the future development of these lands, accounting for a 45% imperviousness draining into block 79. In addition to the subdivision registration, I also want to point out to committee that in 2019, council approved a zoning bylaw amendment on the subject lands, including the rezoning of block 76, which is in the southwest corner of the property. This block, upon original registration, was intended to accommodate a seniors complex consisting of 12 residential units and 24 parking spaces. That plan was since revised, and those lands were rezoned to permit single detached dwellings. So although not shown on this plan, which is the registered M plan, subsequent to this, a part lot control bylaw exemption was approved by council. Block 76 is now two lots for single detached dwellings. So the 7 lots that are subject to the proposed applications, again, they're shown here with the red circles. The lands do benefit from site-specific zoning, which was approved in 2019. However, at the time, a special provision relating to increased lot coverage was not requested. The standard maximum lot coverage within the R1 zone is 35% of the lot area. And since Huron Creek has purchased these lands from the previous owner, they've had the opportunity to prepare a number of models and floor plans for potential purchasers to consider and ultimately purchase, including a bungalow option. And as committee, I'm sure can understand, bungalows generally provide for larger building footprints than traditional two-story units, as all the living space is located on the ground floor as opposed to spread out over 2 floors. So the bungalows that are proposed for these lots, they provide gross floor areas of 1,681 square feet, plus a 2-car garage and a porch. So that totals 2,294 square feet. Aside from lot 7, which is the sort of one outlier that we are requesting 43% lot coverage, that lot is proposed to have a slightly wider garage and a footprint of 2,444 square feet. So just about 250 square feet larger than the other lots, dwellings. So this chart here, very concisely represents the proposed lot coverage for each of the lot, including the actual increase in brackets above the maximum 35. As mentioned, lot 7, we are requesting 43% to accommodate a slightly wider garage and 40% for the balance of the lots. And I do want to point out, I will speak to it again briefly as we move forward with this presentation, that no other zoning provisions are encroached, including interior, rear yard, front yard setbacks, nor height provisions we're seeking relief for. So these lot coverages, they account for bungalow building footprints, as well as a provision for a future deck on each lot. The decks will range in size from 145 to 200 square feet. The reason we are including decks is they are included in lot coverage. And I think I want to take this opportunity. I was able to view the previous meeting, and there were some comments. There was a comment made by member Vanderwielen, had a question about the material, or questioning whether or not we can enforce a requirement that the material underneath a deck be impervious. And so I just want to sort of point out, we've sort of questioned why decks in general would be included in the lot coverage calculation. Generally speaking, in my experience, I've had the unfortunate experience of building a few decks myself, but typically it's common for the materials under the decks to consist of gravel or just the sort of the ground. So fill. Most decks, they do allow for water to fall between the cracks and penetrate the ground below. I don't expect it would be very common for homeowners or the developer or builders to install and pay to install, a permanent or a hard surface such as paver stones or a concrete slab underneath a deck. That's just sort of added cost for something that would never be seen, and in my experience, that's just not very common. But in this particular case, we're following the definitions and the structure of the zoning bylaw in this regard. But I think suffice to say that I would suggest, decks in themselves are not 100% impervious. They're in some ways permeable. But moving on, as committee is familiar, any landowner has the right to apply for an application under the Planning Act. There's no guarantees an application will be approved. However, the Planning Act has very specific criteria when considering a minor variance application, and as committee knows, these are known as the 4 tests. The first test being, do they conform to the general intent of the official plan? And it's our opinion that in understanding residential uses are permitted, the application aligns with the goals and policies of the official plan. We believe it fosters positive community character and supports a mix and range of dwelling types. This development can be serviced with existing infrastructure, including stormwater management. The second test, do they conform to the general intent of the zoning bylaw? So under the current zoning, single detached dwellings are permitted, and it's our opinion the applications do not represent overdevelopment, noting that all other zoning provisions are satisfied. Aesthetically, the additional lot coverage will not be noticeable to the public realm either. The next test, are they desirable? So it's our opinion that the variances are desirable in order to support a functional and reasonably sized bungalow dwelling unit. This would contribute to a desirable and diverse mix of housing types, which Bungalows are generally targeted towards an aging demographic, supporting the planning concept of aging in place. So it would allow for potential residents that are looking to downsize. Perhaps they live in the settlement area of Elmvale, but don't necessarily want to deal with the dwelling. Perhaps they are having ability or mobility issues. So it would allow for them to maintain their place within the community and their social network. And lastly, are they minor? We believe the variances representing an additional lot coverage of 5 to 8% over the maximum is minor in order to support a more functional dwelling unit without any adverse or negative impacts. The approval of the applications will not impact neighborhood character, and massing of the development will remain consistent with the area. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, no upgrades to existing infrastructure levels are required to accommodate the proposals. So based on this, Chair Gannon, it's my opinion, the application satisfies the 4 tests under the Planning Act when considering a minor variance application. It's understood township planning staff agree with this, which is noted in their staff report. Their recommendation to approve this also considers all of the circulation comments that have been received as well. So I'll just take a moment to focus on stormwater management. There's one slide following this committee, so I appreciate you bearing with me. But at the previous hearing, we had provided details relating to stormwater management, given that the proposed lot coverage increase and any proposed lot coverage increase that this committee considers would have the effect of increasing the impervious area of the lots and the potential to impact the ability to accommodate stormwater management. So as noted in the previous meeting, as well as in the application package, including staff report, there's been considerable back and forth with our engineer, Tatham Engineering, as well as the township's consultant, Ainley. And notwithstanding the township's engineer noting no objections to the applications, and based on the discussion during the previous hearing, we, including Tatham Engineering, of course, we've taken the opportunity to review the concerns raised. We've attempted to address them for committee's consideration. And more specifically, Tatham's reviewed the modeling of the pond to determine the existing available capacity. And based on this review, there's the equivalent capacity within the pond can conservatively accommodate approximately 647 square meters of additional impervious area. So that's what the existing pond can handle today, taking into account the future development of those surrounding lands I had referenced earlier. The applications before committee this evening, they contemplate utilizing 108 square meters of that capacity, leaving an equivalent capacity of 539 square meters of impervious area available within the pond for potential future use. So to be clear, I think it's important to note there's capacity available within the pond for further consideration of future minor variances. I think it's also important to note that the onus will remain on those applicants and whoever they may be to demonstrate they've satisfied the criteria under the Planning Act, similar to what Huron Creek has completed here. So in summary, the applicant is requesting minor variance approval for increased, for increased lot coverages for 7 lots within the Elmvale Village subdivision. The variances satisfy the 4 tests of the Planning Act and will support a desirable housing diversity, catering to varied household sizes, ages, lifestyles, and abilities. Through technical review by Tatham Engineering and supported by the township's engineer, the variances can be accommodated under existing service levels, including the existing stormwater management pond, without any improvements necessary. Lastly, it's my opinion the applications satisfy the 4 tests under the Act, represent good planning, and enable the applicant to proceed to the building permit stage to allow for future occupancy. So having said that, Chair Gannon, we respectfully request committee consider approval of the applications as supported by township staff. And thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I know we were at this for a while last meeting. That does conclude my presentation. As noted, I do know that there was lots of discussion at last month's meeting. I'd be happy to discuss any further concerns with committee that you may have at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public registered to make any oral submissions this evening?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of the applicant? Please raise your sign if you do. Member Kennedy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. My apologies, I wasn't at the meeting last month. So I do have a couple of questions that I apologize if they have already been answered, but my first question is to staff to confirm how many previous minor variance requests for this development have been received and approved to date.
Thank you, Member Kennedy. Through Chair Gannon to yourself, there has been 2 additional minor variances approved in the subdivision that I am aware of.
Thank you. And then through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant's consultants. So I understand from the information that was provided that the swim facility was designed utilizing 2009 swim design criteria. And acknowledging that in 2018, the NVCA developed IDF, or intensity duration frequency curve, corresponding to projected precipitation changes climate models for 2020, 2050, and 2080, which identified average percent increases of 10%, 17%, and 20% respectively. Has the applicant's engineer considered projected precipitation change due to climate change, which both the NVCA and Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authorities have identified to be between 18 and 20% by the end of the century? Pardon me. And then finally, what effect the projected precipitation may have on the existing swim facility's performance from a quantity perspective over its lifetime?
Through you, Chair Gannon, to Member Kennedy, I'm not going to pretend, Member Kennedy, I'm an engineer. David Reed at Tatham is available to perhaps speak to it. Before he does, I did want to take an opportunity that the NVCA was circulated on this application. The NVCA has provided comment. They have indicated they have no objection to the approval of the application. So I don't know if that does not, I recognize, answer your question specifically. I'll let David Reed comment on that, but I do want to indicate and advise the balance of committee that the NVCA has, I'll say, signed off or noted that they have no objections to the approval of the application. So, Mr. Reed, if you can perhaps speak in more detail to those more technical elements, by all means, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Just to answer your question, Patty, no, we haven't updated the modeling based on the updated IDF curves from NVCA. At this time, we didn't feel it was necessary to get into remodeling the entire subdivision based on these minor variances. So we were using the original IDF curves when we updated the modeling.
Okay, thank you. And one final question, Mr. Chair, through you to staff. Within the staff report, it makes reference to any additional requests for minor variances for this development may not be supported by the municipality. So my question is to staff, what tools does the township have under the Planning Act to refuse any further minor variance requests for this development? Understanding that should this committee approve these variances, it would seem that a precedent is being set for the development.
Thank you, Member Kennedy. Through Chair Gannon to yourself. First, I would like to note that this not necessarily would set a precedent, as every application is weighed on its individual merit. One of the considerations in my staff report you will note was that adequate servicing is provided, including stormwater management. So that comment was to put the applicant and the developer of this on notice that future minor variances may not be considered for the purposes of lot coverage. This isn't to say that perhaps a setback or other type of variance, whatever it may be, may not be considered, but specifically as it relates to lot coverage due to the limitations of the stormwater management pond. And again, each application would have to be weighed on its individual merit.
Thank you, Planner Belcourt. So my comment, Mr. Chair, is just basically that although staff doesn't feel that that precedent would be set, it's in my opinion, implied that this committee, if we do approve these variances, that moving forward, you know, there's the challenge to any other applicants with regards to us denying anything or the next committee denying that request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee have any questions or comments? Member Webster.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. What I'm concerned about here is, Mr. Barker brought these numbers forward in his presentation. So if I have these numbers correct, the capacity of the stormwater management pond at its fullest is 647 cubic something or other, and this will add 108, which is approximately 16% of the capacity of the stormwater management pond as designed to accommodate the larger building envelopes on these 7 lots. That out of a subdivision of 142 minus the 2 that have already applied for variance means that the remainder may not be able to, or they will have to fit themselves into the remaining 84% of capacity in the stormwater management pond. So we have the potential of 140 minus 7, say 130 applications for committee of adjustment to build sheds, decks, etc. Which, by the way, does not include hardscaping, because there is no, to my knowledge, there's no building permit required for hardscaping, which hardscaping takes you directly into the stormwater management pond. You can talk about under the deck all you want, but hardscaping takes you directly to the runoff. So my sense is that while these fit the criteria, there's approximately 140, let's say 130 lots left that could apply for a minor variance, and there may not be capacity in the stormwater management pond. Additionally, in the staff report, it says, please note any future request for increased lot coverage within the Elmville Village Plan subdivision will require confirmation that there is capacity in the stormwater management pond to the satisfaction of the township as the infrastructure is nearing capacity. Who's going to determine who's going to determine the capacity based on Member Kennedy's comments about 100-year storms and future storms and so on and so forth, and then development to the east on that roughly 4 acres there, combined with the 4 acres right in the front of the on the highway that have been recently rezoned as multiple family dwelling or multi-residential, if you will. So if lot 39 comes up and wants to do a 200 square foot utility building, and they're going to apply for a minor variance, who's going to tell them that the stormwater management pond can handle it or not? Whose cost is that? Who's going to do the engineering? Who's going to ask the engineers? Who's going to update it? How's it all going to fill in? I think that there's a potential here that we're setting a road or a strategy where by approving this, we're imposing the notion that there may not be an opportunity to add a square footage coverage down the road, because the stormwater management pond is in its access, and it's in its access because we approved these 7 lot increases. And by the way, Mr. Barker mentioned the 43% coverage in trying to diminish the 43. It's not 43%, it's 8% increase in the lot coverage allowed. Even though it's a 43% number, it's 8% in excess of the coverage allowed. So on that basis, I'm not able to support this. I don't think we can. I'm not comfortable punishing people down the road who might want to build a shed that's bigger than 100 square feet, and/or all the opportunities to hardscape in that subdivision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Member Webster. Mr. Barker, you have your hand up. You wish to respond?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gannon, and through you to Member Webster. I appreciate the feedback and the comments. I would appreciate some. I mean, I've tried to jot down some of the concerns you had as you were speaking. So I would appreciate if we could maybe engage in some dialogue around those concerns. But I think you just sort of in general, as Planner Belcourt had noted, I think planners are weary of suggesting, any application would set a precedent. That there's some serious notations around that. I don't believe that this application, the approval of this application, would set a precedent by any stretch. But I can appreciate where committee's concern lies in that respect. With respect to who's going to pay if someone else wanted to move forward in the future, I'm sort of interpreting your comments as you're speaking, so please correct me if I've misunderstood, but it sounds as though you're concerned about approving this one because it might prevent someone else from applying in the future. And the way I kind of see it is you're suggesting that this would be denied so that someone else could be approved. And so that's kind of what I'm struggling to wrap my head around a little bit, but I think if I can sort of focus on a little more of the details of the concern. So the pond as it stands today, it has approximately, and I'm translating this to sort of an equivalent capacity because in speaking with David Reed at Tatham, I tried to present these details in a more sort of less technical manner. So effectively there is the capacity within the pond to accommodate an additional 647 square meters of impervious area throughout these development lands. I understand, and I know, Member Kennedy, has an engineering background. I understand stormwater management volumes are measured in cubic meters, but I'm trying to break this down into impervious area. This application requests to make use of 108 square meters of that capacity. So if this were approved, there would be 539 square meters of equivalent capacity available for potential future use, whether that's sheds, whether that's more decks, whether that's larger building footprints, whatever the case may be. However, what I want to clarify is that capacity is in excess of the assumptions made on the surrounding lands. So the phase 2 development lands have been accounted for, are not included in that 539 square meters, where the assumption has been made that 45% of those lands would be impervious. The same assumption has been made on the triangle lands, the lands to the east that were referred to, fronting along Queen Street adjacent the municipal park. And so there is capacity remaining. You had questions and concerns about sort of punishing or preventing others from applying, and I can understand that. Huron Creek is in the same situation as any other landowner would be in. They've made an application to be considered for this increased lot coverage under the context of the Planning Act, and I appreciate you mentioned that it satisfies the criteria, and I would implore committee to consider that, because that's what the test is under the Planning Act. And so if the owner of lot 3 wanted to come forward with a request, whether that request is for, as you noted, an 8% increase or 43%, a 10% increase, a 2% increase, it's their responsibility to demonstrate to the committee, as well as staff, that everything can be addressed, including stormwater management concerns. And I'll take you back a little bit in time as it relates to this specific development. These applications were initially submitted in December of 2021. We did not sufficiently answer questions of the township's engineer relating to stormwater management. So we spent that time between submission. We had targeted being on the January 2022 agenda. Staff indicated they could not support because the Ainley Group had outstanding concerns relating to stormwater management. So we spent the better part of those 4 or 5 months prior to the May hearing working with the township's engineer to ensure that stormwater management concerns have been addressed amongst other issues. And so your question about who's going to pay for that, well, Huron Creek paid for that. They paid for the township, they paid the application fees, they've paid for cost recovery as it relates to using peer review. So Ainley Group, much like any other applicant for any other application, whether it's on tonight's agendas, the next agenda, previous agendas, whatever the case may be. So I think it's important to just reiterate, anyone who applies to this committee or any other municipal committee of adjustment, it is their obligation to demonstrate how items have been addressed. And I think it's, one thing I do want to say is this pond, much like every stormwater management pond, has a limit, right? It can only handle so much before other measures are considered, whether that's an improvement to the pond itself or an additional pond, implementing low impact development practices. There's underground solutions. So there's a variety of solutions that can be explored, including lot level controls on an individual basis. But ultimately, if township staff are not satisfied stormwater management infrastructure can handle a future minor variance, then they will not support the application, is what is my understanding. So sorry, I see you have your page up there. So I hope that maybe gives a little bit more assurance and comfort, perhaps not, but I'd appreciate your feedback.
Okay. Go ahead, Member Webster.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Mr. Barker, please entertain the numbers for me, will you? Absolutely. Your client, the developer, not Bill and Mary Jones, who own lot 13. Okay, so there's quite a bit of difference between your client applying for minor variances for 7 lots, than Bill and Mary who want to put, a little cabana in the backyard to go with their pool. So let's not confuse who's applying for what here and who has pockets and who doesn't have pockets. The other thing is, in terms of numbers, Mr. Barker, your 7-lot application will use 16% of the available stormwater management capacity. That leaves 130 lots left over to use 84% of the capacity. 130 lots. I think you've got more than your share. I think you're asking for way more than your share. And this plan of subdivision was approved a long time ago based on lot coverages. So I'm sorry, but you're way beyond, from my numbers here. I mean, 7 lots are going to use up 16% of the available stormwater management capacity. That leaves roughly 130 lots for 84% left over. I think the reach is way beyond any reach that I'm going to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Webster. Mr. Barker, I'm going to let you have your last words here because I think this is going on a little bit longer than necessary unless other members of the committee have anything to say, because I do have some comments as well. So go ahead now, Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. And just to clarify to Member Webster, and I appreciate the opportunity to respond to the concern. The additional remaining lots, Member Webster, are already accounted for within the pond. So it's not as though we need 103 lots. I suspect what you're saying is there's potential for 103 future landowners to come forward. And that's true. Just like in any other subdivision, however many lots there are that exist, all of those homeowners have the right to apply. The onus is on the applicant. And I can appreciate that a developer is not the same as Bob and Mary. Quite frankly, I don't think that is the concern or of committee. I think that the concern should be relating to the 4 tests under the Act. So I just want to clarify the remaining capacity already accounts for those additional lots within phase 2, as well as the adjacent lands. If the developer cannot build within phase 2 or the additional lands to the east, they're obligated to find a solution to ensure stormwater management is completed to the satisfaction of the municipality. Thank you, Chair
Mr.
Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Member Cooney, Member Van der Welen, any questions or comments?
No,
Go ahead, Member Cooney.
my major concern is that the design criteria used for the pond and recheck the pond is not to current standards, regardless of whether the Conservation Authority has, again, provided some oversight with regards to that. So I do have a concern with referencing available capacity when it's really not true and does not meet current design criteria. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment that I did a little bit more reconnaissance today at the site. And without question, I could see there are between 5 and 7 properties that don't have decks or don't have any hardscaping, but they're going to, because they have 2 to 3 steps to walk down from their back doors to the yard. I also noted one large deck that has already been built, whether it had a building permit or not, I don't know. I also noted a 3-season room that had been built onto one of the properties already. And again, whether it had a building permit or not, I'm not certain. So there's another 7 pieces of property without any question that will be impacting the storm management. And as much as I appreciate what the developer is suggesting, I find it strange that they've already sold a house that we've got a party asking us to approve this when they don't have the permission to build what it is that they've sold previously. They already had an approved plan of subdivision. The lots were there, the sizes of the houses were there, and now they're coming forward with this. So those are my comments. I don't expect any response to that. I'm going to read motion and we'll move forward with this unless any other members of the committee have any other comments. Seeing none, I have a motion for application A0422 through A1022 that the Committee of Adjustment, having given consideration to the applicable provisions of section 45 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, characteristics of the land in question and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the application dated June the 22nd, 2022, correspondence received and the information presented at the hearings held on May 25th, 2022 and June 22nd, 2022, and the discussion of the matter hereby approve application A0422 to A1022 as applied for. We have a mover and seconder just to get this on the floor, please. Moved by Van der Welen, seconded by Webster, all in favor. The matter has been denied. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baker, Mr. Reed. To Secretary Treasurer to introduce application or item 4.2 on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Item 4.2 on the agenda is minor variance application A1822, submitted by D and J Lyons, owners of land known municipally as 2142 South Ore Lake Road. The purpose and effect of the application is to permit the construction of an 86.96 square meter detached accessory building with the storage loft on the subject lands. The proposed detached garage will result in the exceedance of the maximum total area and height requirements. And in addition, the applicant is seeking a reduced exterior side yard setback for the structure and an existing shed. Applicants are requesting a maximum total ground floor area of all accessory buildings and structures, proposed garage and existing boathouse of 131.86 square meters, whereas section 14.3.9 permits a maximum area of 65 square meters. and a maximum height of 6.85 meters, whereas section 3.7.5B permits a maximum height of 4.5 meters or the height of the dwelling, whichever is lesser.
Thank you. Has there been any additional correspondence or comments that have been received?
No public or HC comments have been received for application A1822.
Thank you. May I have the applicant introduce themselves and explain what it is that you're looking for us?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is David Lyons. The application is to build a structure that exceeds the current zoning limitations in order to store hobby cars and boats and toys and things of that nature. I'm newly retired and look forward to enjoying this community. We're recent immigrants to the community, if you will, and I look forward to spending our senior years here enjoying hobbies as much as we can and an opportunity to be part of the community. I have nothing further to add to what the report suggests, but I'm certainly available to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any members of the public registered to make any oral submissions?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Members of the committee, do you have any questions or concerns regarding this application? I see none. Then I will read a resolution for motion A1820/18/22. That the Committee of Adjustment, having given consideration to the applicable provisions of Section 45 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, characteristics of the land in question and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the application dated June the 22nd, 2022, correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on June the 22nd, 2022, and the discussions on the matter, hereby approve application A18/2022 as applied for. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Cooney, seconded by Kennedy. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a 20-day appeal period, Mr. Lyons, but you'll be.
Noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When the Secretary Treasurer is ready, we'll go with 4.3.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Item 4.3 on the agenda is minor variance application A2422 submitted by G. Mine, owner of lands known municipally as 1013 Old Second South. The purpose and effect of the application is to permit the construction of a detached residential accessory building for storage purposes. The proposed accessory building will result in the exceedance of the maximum total area. The applicant is proposing a maximum total area of accessory buildings and structures of 153.29 square meters, whereas subsection 33.3.14.1H permits a maximum of 115 square meters.
Thank you. Has there been any additional correspondence or comments that have been received?
No public or agency comments have been received for this application.
Thank you. May I have the applicant introduce themselves and please explain what it is that you're looking for?
Hi, Gary Mine. I'm the owner and applicant. As noted, I'm looking to build a storage building on my property, 1,650 square feet. No changes to the plans that I've submitted.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public registered this evening to make any oral submissions?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions or comments or concerns? I see none. I will move then ahead with motion A2422. That the Committee of Adjustment, having given consideration to the applicable provisions of Section 45 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, the characteristics of the land in question and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the application dated June the 22nd, 2022, the correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on June the 22nd, 2022, and discussions on the matter, hereby approve application A24/2022 as applied for. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Webster, seconded by Cooney. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. There's a 20-day appeal period.
All right, thank you.
When the Secretary Treasurer is ready, we can move ahead with application number 4.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Item 4.4 on the agenda is minor variance application A2622 submitted by Justin Sherry Design Studio on behalf of Kay Dobney, owner of lands known municipally as 27 Waddy Road. The purpose and effect of the application is permit the construction of a 2-story detached accessory building with an additional residential unit, second suite. Proposed accessory building will exceed the maximum size provisions. The applicant is requesting a maximum additional residential unit size of 118.19 square meters, gross floor area, including parking areas, a garage with ground floor area of 65 square meters, whereas section 3.48.3A permits a maximum of 40% of the total gross floor area of the primary dwelling to a maximum of the permitted accessory building floor area for the applicable zone. The applicant is also requesting a maximum building height for an additional residential unit in a detached accessory building of 2 stories and 4.72 meters, whereas section 3.48.3C permits a maximum of 2 stories and shall not exceed the height of the primary dwelling. Finally, the applicant is asking for a maximum total accessory building size of 118.19 square meters gross floor area with a ground floor area of 65 square meters, whereas section 4.312 permits a maximum of 65 square meters.
Thank you. Has there been any additional correspondence or comments that have been received?
Yes, written comments were received from Kenneth Novinger and Dale Novinger of 25 Waddy Road on June 21st, 2022, stating concerns in opposition to the application. A complete copy of the comments have been added to the committee agenda.
Thank you. May I have the applicant or their agent introduce themselves and lead us through what it is that you're looking for.
Hi there, it's Danielle Bilodeau from Justin Sherry Design Studio on behalf of Kim Dobney, the owner. So after applying for permit and doing a deeper dig into the zoning bylaws, it came to our attention that we needed a minor variance for the total square footage. And then we were also asked to verify the height of the existing house. So after we did that, we discovered we also need a variance for the height of the proposed structure, just a slight variance for the height. And I just want to thank the staff for taking the time to review our application, and we are pleased that their planning report does recommend approval as of right now.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public registered to make any oral submissions this evening?
There are no members of the public who wish to make an oral submission. However, Mr. Novinger is in attendance should the committee have any questions about his written comments.
Thank you.
Committee,
sorry. Any questions or concerns, comments? Member Webster, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gannon, through you to, I guess, Planner Belcourt. Some of the previous applications we deal with and have dealt with tonight are they present on a percentage basis of how much, what is the percentage over 40% that lot coverage has exceeded. And in this particular report, I don't see a percentage. And it's a bit conflicting too, because we have 2 stories. So if the allowable lot coverage is 40%, what are we about to approve in terms of allowable lot coverage percentage over the 40%? Can you grasp those numbers quickly for all record? I'm not getting it.
Thank you, Member Webster, through Chair Gannon to yourself. We are not considering a lot coverage percentage with this. The applicant does comply with all lot coverage requirements. The percentage here is in the additional residential unit policies. It says that an ARU, it provides, I guess, size parameters for an additional residential unit based on the size of the house. So up to 40% when it is in a detached accessory building, or the maximum area for a detached accessory building, which in this case is 699.68 square feet, which is 65 square meters. That's where that number comes from. And that actually is the limiting factor, not necessarily the 40%, but the 699. So although there is a 40% maximum, there's also a numerical maximum, and that is what they're amending here tonight to accompany the whole gross floor area, including the parking spaces of the additional residential unit or accessory building.
Thank you, Planner Belcourt. Chair, again, I missed a word there. So 40% is not 40%. There's some other, something in the official plan that there's another word. I didn't quite get what that word was.
Yes, so perhaps if I read like maybe the policy or the amendment in my report here, I'm just going to scroll down. Okay, so in the additional residential unit policies that the township approved, it states the additional residential unit within a detached accessory building, which is the case for this application, shall not exceed 40% of the total gross floor area of the primary dwelling to a maximum of the permitted accessory building floor area for the applicable zone, which is the 65 square meters or 699.68 square feet, or a maximum of 115 square meters, whichever is the lesser. So in this case, the 699 square feet is the lesser total that they are varying tonight.
I'm going to have to do a deeper dive into that. Thank you, Planner Belcourt.
It is a bit confusing.
I confuse easy. I don't know. Thank you.
Members of the committee, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Member Kennedy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to I guess the applicant. The staff report uses the phrase primarily used as a garage in reference to the bottom floor of this new structure. What else would the first floor be utilized for?
Thank you for the question. So the ground floor is the garage, and then there's just an entrance and stairs to get up to the second floor unit.
Okay, thank you. And then just a comment with regards to this application and the correspondence from the neighbor. I'm in agreement with a couple of his comments. I'm most concerned with the fact that staff report identifies that elevation drawings submitted by the applicant's agents have been included as Appendix A. However, only the front elevation was provided in my package. So I am a little concerned with regards to privacy for the other elevations, which would be the east, west, and potentially south.
Go ahead, Planner Belcourt.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Through yourself to Member Kennedy, I will note as the applicant's agent has noted, this was discovered through a building permit application and review that variance was required. So I have seen additional elevations for this. However, with this application, which is public record, unlike a building permit application, only the front elevation was submitted. So that was what was included in Appendix A. Perhaps the applicant's agent can elaborate on the other elevations and maybe what they entail.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm able to, I did take a couple notes from the comments provided by Ken and Dale. If I could go through those, I think that would be helpful for everybody.
Go ahead.
Okay. So for the height, I know they were concerned about the height of the building and it overlooking their backyard and their privacy becoming an issue. But if we're looking at the variance for height, the difference between the existing house and the neighbor's house, the heights are pretty comparable. And this proposed structure would be about 6 inches taller. And because it's a lot further back, you won't really even notice that it's that much taller. And the way we designed it, as you can see in the front elevation, is that from the road, it looks like 1 story. So the second story, although we're calling it that, from the front is more of a loft style. So it won't scream second story building. It looks like a single story garage. And for the other elevations, if we're talking about the privacy of 25 Waddy Road, there is only 1 window on the west elevation, and it is in the bathroom, and it is 2 by 2. So, and I think primarily it's for ventilation more than anything else. So I don't think the privacy will be too affected on the neighboring lot. In my opinion, I hope they can agree with me. And then they also asked about what the building will look like. And we're proposing like a craftsman traditional style for the structure, which will complement and kind of follow the traditional neighborhood, both the single and two-story houses on the road.
Thank you. Mr. Novinger, I noticed that your hand is up. As was indicated in the preliminary comments of this, it will only if a member of committee has a question for you, will you be able to discuss this. The policy is that you have to register for your comments prior to the meeting, which was yesterday. So if any members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Novinger, we can go ahead with that. Otherwise, I leave it to the committee for any other questions or comments of the applicant. Not seeing any other questions or comments for the applicant, therefore I'm going to go ahead with the motion. A2622, that the Committee of Adjustment, having given consideration to the applicable provisions of Section 45 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, the characteristics of the land in question, and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the application dated June the 22nd, 2022, the correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on June the 22nd, 2022, and the discussion on the matter hereby approve application A26-2022 as applied for. We have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Vanderwillen, seconded by Webster. All in favor? Carried. There's a 20-day appeal period, Ms. Bilodeau.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
You're welcome. And when the Secretary Treasurer is ready, application number 5.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Item number 5 is, 4.5 on the agenda is minor variance application A2722, submitted by G. Sligo on behalf of F. Ramirez, owner of lands known municipally as 21 Lloyd Cook Drive West. The purpose and effect of the application is to legalize an existing detached accessory building, cabana. The structure was constructed in a location which does not comply with the minimum exterior side yard width requirement of zoning bylaw 5000, and as a result, the applicant is requesting an exterior side width of 3.929 meters, whereas section 4.3.7a requires a minimum of 6 meters.
Thank you. Has there been any additional correspondence or comments that have been received?
Yes, the manager of Roads and Fleet stated no concerns.
All right. May I have the applicant please introduce themselves and provide us with the information required?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee, and staff. My name is German Slivko, agent on behalf of my mother, Tatiana Felipe Ramirez. We've constructed a cabana, and we are too close to the road. We got a little ambitious during COVID because, well, it was wanted to have the family enjoy something, pool and cabana and such. We've conformed to everything drawings wise, engineering, aside from this minor I guess setback. So
Thank you. Are there any members of the public registered to make any oral submissions this evening?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. I just have one question for the applicant. Was this your request for minor variance is pretty specific as to dimensions? Was this done through a survey?
yes, it was.
Okay, so there is a copy of a a land survey that could be seen indicating that it is exactly the dimension that you're talking about, not just going back by the fence or just going to what is assumed to be the property line. And the reason I ask that is because you are on a corner lot, and if it isn't done by a surveyor, it could lead to another request for a minor variance, which would cost more money.
So whether or not, so let me I guess clarify. So we had an existing survey, and you're asking if a surveyor has come out and essentially pinned the building to its exact location to those exact numbers?
That's correct. That's what I'm asking you.
No. The answer would be no.
Okay, so being that it isn't, do you wish us to defer this in case it isn't exactly as you are indicating, or do you wish us to proceed with a motion?
I'm not too sure what the correct answer would be to that, actually.
Planner Belcourt, did you wish to comment on this?
I just, thank you, Chair Gannon. I just wanted to add to the applicant's comment that the site plan was generated by an author, like an architect who did stamp the drawings as well. And I do note that from the original site plans that I saw with the original building permit, these are more, I guess, defined numbers than what were previously done on the site plan. So a new site plan was done with the construction of the structure, I guess, as built site plan.
Okay, so you're suggesting it's an as-built and the numbers are correct.
That is my understanding based on the submission.
Okay. So to the applicant again.
To add to that, I guess that does make sense, because I did have the architect go out and he did physically measure everything. So yeah, yes, the architect, yes. And to answer your question before, surveyor, no. So yeah, that's where I would leave it.
Okay, so again, the question to you is, do you wish us to proceed, or do you wish to have a surveyor confirm the numbers so that you're not stuck in the future?
I wish to proceed because I am confident in those numbers. It is where it is according to those drawings. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make certain for your benefit.
Appreciate it.
Member Vanderwillen, go ahead.
And maybe we can go ahead and finish this first, but I first of all went to the wrong door because under our thing here it says 24 Lloyd Cook Drive, and the owner there told me yes, it's 21. So anyways, if there is anything comes up of it, I did go to 24 because the thing told me to go to 24. So
thank you. Planner Belcourt.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Just through you to Member Vanderwillen, and for the record, for the rest of the committee, we do note that there was a typo in the notice, and we did speak to Mr. Vanderwillen about that, is my understanding. I will note that the correct roll number and legal description are referenced on the notice, as well as the accurate site plan, and the signs were posted at 21 Lloyd Cook Drive. So I just wanted to state that in the record, that it was just a typo on the municipal address and not the remainder of the document.
Thank you. I have a motion then for A27/2022 that the Committee of Adjustment, having given consideration to the applicable provisions of Section 45 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, characteristics of the land in question and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the application dated June the 22nd, 2022, the correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on June the 22nd, 2022, and the discussion on the matter, hereby approve application A27/2022 as applied for. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Kennedy, seconded by Cooney. All in favor? Get along, guys. Thank you. Matter is approved. There is still a 20-day appeal period, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
And item 4.6 on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Item 4.6 on the agenda is consent applications B1410 to B1810 by Goodread Planning Group on behalf of 451082 Ontario Limited, First Elm Holdings Inc., owner of lands known municipally as 2872 Old Second South. The purpose of the applications is to obtain approval to sever and create 5 new residential lots and 1 retained lot from an existing vacant parcel measuring approximately 43.7 hectares with approximately 414.8 meters of frontage along Old Second South.
Thank you. Has there been any additional correspondence or comments that have been received?
Yes, the drainage superintendent stated that the subject property is not assessed into any known municipal drain and therefore no condition is required to satisfy the Drainage Act. And Hydro One stated no concerns with the application.
Thank you. May I please have the applicant introduce themselves and provide us with information. Director Spragno, I see that there is no.
Evening.
Well, there you go. Mr. Goodread, you're there.
Yes, good evening to the committee, staff, and residents. I'm Brian Goodread of the Goodread Planning Group, and we act as planners for 451082 Ontario Limited and First Elm Holdings Inc. I would note that Mason Walton, who is a signing officer for both companies, is also in attendance this evening. As the Committee of Adjustment knows, planning application approvals that are being sought include consent approvals for B14/10 to B18/10. And there was an application for zoning amendment to rezone the severed lots that are proposed by these applications to an R1-78 zone. And I just want to note for the committee that the zoning bylaw amendment was approved by council. The appeal period has run and the zoning is in full force and effect to support the consent applications before the committee. I'd note just by introduction as well, the supporting documentation that the applicant provided in support of both the consent and the zoning bylaw amendment applications included a planning justification report, an environmental impact study, a functional servicing report, a slope stability analysis, and a geotechnical report. I would note as well that there were extensive discussions with township planning staff, as well as technical staff from the conservation authorities to deal with the concerns and technical requirements of both, I'm going to say, of the municipality and that agency. And we do have sign off from the conservation authority in terms of the geotechnical report and the slope stability analysis. Now, I'm going to be brief in my comments, and we've reviewed the planning staff report and the proposed conditions of consent that planning staff have introduced. And we agree with the findings of that staff report. And it is our opinion that the consent applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to the growth plan, and the county and township official plans. And we had noted as well that the severed and retained parcels comply with the approved zoning that is on the subject lands. Now, these were all matters that were addressed in the staff report, but I just say we are in agreement with the staff report in this regard. We also are in agreement with the proposed conditions of approval that were set out in the staff report, except for condition 3. And this, the removal of condition 3 stems from comments that are part of the agenda package for the committee. And it was Steve Buchanan of the township staff that indicated that no condition is required in respect to the Drainage Act. So that's the only comment we would have in respect to the conditions. We're in agreement with the proposed conditions in all other respects. And that concludes my remarks. If there's any questions for the committee, I'd be pleased to try to respond to those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any members of the public registered to make any oral submissions this evening?
Thank you. There are no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Before we move forward to questions from the committee members, if there are any, Director Spragno, would you like to address item number 3 on the conditions as it's a standard wording?
Thank you, Chair Gannon. I would agree with the applicant, Mr. Goodread. Now that Public Works has essentially waived the need for that condition, I would be in agreement with removing that condition from the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, any questions, comments, concerns? We'll go with Mr. Webster first.
Thank you, Chair Gannon. Well, my question, I guess, through you to perhaps Mr. Goodread, will each of these lots have an entry onto the old second? Will there be individual driveways onto the old second?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And if I could go one more question, perhaps through you, Chair Gannon, to Director Spagnol. The county official plan, or in the document, it speaks to the county of Simcoe provided the requested population allocation of 15 persons in 2016. 5 lots of this size with a population allocation of 15 seems to be a bit meager. Perhaps you could comment on that, Director Spagnol, because I believe that the intersecondary plan calls for, or at the initial called for 4.7, it might be up to 6.2 per hectare now. So I'm wondering how that 15 persons allocation reflects on these lots presently.
Through you, Chair Gannon, to Committee Member Webster, the 15 persons was a population allocation that was doled out through a County of Simcoe program that was really legislated through the Places to Grow document at the time. The persons per hectare that were assigned to these properties are not a mechanism of a density figure that Mr. Webster is speaking to. These were actual population allocations devoted to individual requests from private property owners. And these persons in this population allocation were doled out through that county program. I will add that the persons that are forecasted per unit it's a forecast, it's a moving target. There's no means to go and hold them to 3 people per unit. It's more of a guiding factor and as part of these applications.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well,
Member
follow
Webster.
up here again. I just, maybe for clarification, then Director Spagnol, you could advise, was the allocation based on 5 lots or just on that piece of property that existed at that time as a 1-unit piece, which actually didn't exist at that time. So I'm not clear how the 15 person allocation came to pass. Perhaps it was 2 lots or 3 lots instead of 5. That's what I'm getting at.
Through you, Chair Gagnon, to Committee Member Webster, the 15 persons was predicated on 5 lots. As you can see, the date from when these applications were filed were in 2010. There was already applications in motion, and the applicant and the property owners at the time had submitted their request to the county with the proposed lots in mind and the actual applied for lots in mind as it relates to this application. So the county was dealing with specific requests. For example, there are other subdivisions within Midhurst where there were subdivision plans that were submitted as well. So this is no different than those applications. The request was submitted with 5 lots in mind. And that was what the county considered when it went through that exercise of allocating population for this specific property.
Thank you, Director Spagnol. As you may recall, I was significantly involved in those days, having been a member of council at that time. That's why it's of interest to me. I don't think it matters in the grand scheme of things, but it was all part of a cluster, if you will, at the time. So thanks for clarifying that. I don't suppose anybody's going to measure whether there's 20,000 people in Vintners by 2031 or 25,000 or 15,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Cooney, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Through yourself to Director Spagnol again, just for clarification purposes. The old second is identified in the secondary plan as a primary road. And I'm just looking for clarification if road widenings are not required to service future road improvements that will support all the development that's there. There doesn't seem to be anything identified on these severance applications. So what is the current road right of way, and should we be identifying road right of way widenings at this time through the severance application? Thank you.
Through you, Chair Gannon, to Member Cooney. At this time, I'm not quite sure if road widenings will be required as part of that process. And I'd have to go look into it further to see what the road widening or what the road allowance width would need to be as part of those widenings. These applications were circulated to Public Works and Engineering, and there wasn't the identification for a need for a road widening. And it would have been those comments where we would have relied upon if a road widening was required. So at this point, that's why it's not included as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you for your response.
Thank you. Member Kennedy.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up on Member Cooney's question to the director. So, and maybe Member Cooney can clarify this for me. In the was the road identified as a arterial or a collector?
It was identified as a primary road. It did not identify arterial or collector, which is why I was not clear on whether it will be an arterial or collector. It is a primary road for the future developments that will front it in the future. So.
Okay, sorry. And again, to you, Mr. Chair, to the director then, would it not be prudent to follow up with Engineering and Public Works specifically to see with regards to their master traffic plan, if in the future this road will become an arterial or collector road, and whether or not there is a need for a road widening to ensure that there's sufficient space for any services or utilities that may be required in the future under the master plan?
Through you, Chair Gannon, to Member Kennedy. As previously responded to, the application was circulated to Public Works. Public Works has in the past, and Engineering has in the past, identified the need for road widenings when they have been flagged. So at this point in time, I wouldn't see the need to go and look into it further, just because it has been circulated and it has been raised as a consideration through their reviews.
Thank you. Any other questions or anyone? Thank you. So I'm going to remove requirement number 3 from the list here, and so that will result in them being renumbered to 5 items. So I'm going to read motion for applications B14/10 to B18/10. That the Committee of Adjustment, having given consideration to the applicable provisions of Section 53 of the Planning Act, the official plan of the Township of Springwater, characteristics of the subject land and its surroundings as addressed in the planning report on the subject application dated June the 22nd, 2022, correspondence received and information presented at the hearing held on June the 22nd, 2022, and the discussion on the matter hereby approve of the application as applied for, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the applicant meet all requirements, financial or otherwise, of the municipality, including posting of securities. Number two, that the applicant provide 2 copies of the registered survey of the severed and retained lots prepared by an Ontario land surveyor. Number three, that the applicant provide confirmation that reasonable use guidelines can be met with respect to sanitary services on the severed lots. Number four, that the applicant be required to pay the township a parkland dedication fee for each new lot in line with the township parkland dedication policy. And number five, that the applicant enter into a consent agreement with the township related to the following matters: stormwater management / overall drainage plan, offsite works, reasonable use assessment prepared by a certified engineer, confirmation of the provision of septic from a certified engineer, utility plans, hydro, telecommunication, natural gas, etc., tree preservation plan, if applicable, provisions of access, and finally, securities associated with external site works. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Vander Willen, seconded by Webster. All in favor? Application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Goodread.
I'd like to thank the committee for this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And is there any other business to discuss this evening? Henry, go ahead.
Just a question through you to Member Cooney and Member Kennedy. Do you know how much rain we're going to get in 2025, 2026? I don't care what year you pick. Do you know how much rain? Question is, how much rain are we going to get?
Well, the expectations from studies and forecasts is that the rain amounts will increase up to 20%, and it'll be gradual as climate change occurs. Most designs and criteria have changed in that regard, so that they've accounted for these 100-year storms and the volume of rain falling by at least 20% increase.
Based on what?
So Henry, I can speak. Sorry, Lauren, to jump in there. I actually have a memo from Tatham Engineering that I have from my professional life that utilize an emission scenario for greenhouse gases and climate change based on the Collingwood station, rain station, that the resulting average percent increases from their calculations were 17% for 2050, 10% in 2020. So from 2020 to 2050, we're going to increase by 7%. And based on that, the municipality that I work for, we have updated our engineering standards to include IDF curve data that has taken into consideration a 20% increase for the next 50 years.
And if I could speak to that, a lot of the design criteria that we've been using to date, probably the 2009 data that they were using is from Hurricane Hazel, which is 50 years ago, back in 1954, long outdated. So as the city of Barrie, a lot of other municipalities have updated their criteria based upon all this flooding that you're seeing out west in all the other municipalities around the world as a direct result of climate change.
Okay, you satisfied there, Mr. Vander Willen?
No, they think they have a lot more, or they have a lot more power than I do, because it's people, or there is no people that is going to say or determine how much rain is going to be. Like, it's far beyond them, and we're spending money on climate change trying to fix it. And so what you're saying is it's not being fixed. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't either, but these dreams that people are coming up with is totally like ludicrous. Anyways, that's my comment on that. And so, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can throw something in there too, and I don't disagree with you at all. Mother Nature will prevail one way or the other. I think more than anything, it's the intensity of the rainfall, not so much as as whether or not over a 365-day period or a 10-year period, whether we're going to get more precipitation or less. It's the intensity of it. It's the amount that comes out of the sky at any given time for a period of time. In addition to that, we keep paving roads, we keep building houses, we keep covering land that will suck water in, and it has to go somewhere when it falls out of God's sky. And if we don't have stormwater management in place for that, then we will get flooding and it will be disastrous. And not so much in maybe farming or rural communities, but I have a daughter who's involved in the claims business at a high level in the insurance business, and their number one actuarial insurance rate increase right now is flooding. And that's coast to coast. That's a national company. So it's the intensity of what we get, not necessarily the amount or over an annual precipitation. It's when it comes in huge volumes immediately. So, and we keep paving, we keep building houses, we keep building buildings, we keep covering the land, and that water has to go somewhere. It falls out of the sky. So stormwater management's a big deal.
Great. Anything else, anyone? And I'm going to ask that this committee of adjustment held on June the 22nd, 2022, now does adjourn at 8:31 p.m. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Vanderwillen, seconded by Kennedy. All in favor? Thank you. And Planner Russell, it's nice to see that you're listening to us at least, even though we haven't seen your handsome face in a long time. And he's gonna play silly and not listen to us. Thank you, Ariel. Oh, there he is. He really is there. There really is a planner.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I appreciate that.
Nice to see you, sir.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Night. Stay well.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Brianna. Thanks, Ariel. Thanks, Brianna. Thanks, Danielle and Brent and
Thanks,
everybody
Dennis.
else. Good night, everyone.
Good night.